guys, it's Bree and it's already December, which means it's time for my November wrap up, and I actually read some books last month, unlike October where I only read 4. So in November I ended up reading 9 books. I liked most of them for the most part. There were a few I wasn't a huge fan of, which I'll get into in just a second. I read 3 YA fantasy books and 6 fantasy books that are technically shelved in the adult section, though I'll get into it and say a few of them could probably be more new adult or YA transitioning into adult fantasy, and yeah, but I enjoyed most of the books, so I'm going to go in order of which ones I read. If you were on my channel earlier this month, you know I was reading Kingdom of Ash by Sergey, which is the final Throne of Glass book. If you don't know what this series is about, it basically starts in book 1 about Selena Sardothian, who is an assassin competing to become the king's assassin and win her freedom, basically. It evolves into this epic fantasy world with fae and other creatures and magic and royalty and wars and demons, and it's fascinating. I love it so much. I won't go into it too much because I know it's everywhere right now on book 2, but I gave this one 5 stars. I'll link my written review down below. And then after Kingdom of Ash, I started an audiobook called The Burning Sky by Sherry Thomas. And that book I gave 4 stars. It follows a girl who is in this fantasy world. It seems a little bit like medieval, maybe. And she messes up this potion and ends up finding out that she's like this prophesized warlock, and she and the prince go on an adventure. It's kind of hard to explain. It's the first book in the Elemental trilogy, which came out a few years ago. I really liked it because it wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting just medieval European inspired YA fantasy. That's all I was expecting from it. It ended up being different dimensions where it was like Victorian England in one, and the prince goes to Eton because he can't go to school in his own world, and there's fantasy. Like, there's no magic in London, but then there is magic in their world, and it was kind of hard to follow at times because it was an audiobook and I listened to it while I was driving, so I definitely missed parts of the story. But it turned out way better than I was expecting, and I would totally recommend it. I might continue on in the trilogy, actually. I was pleasantly surprised. And then after that one, I picked up Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri, which is a November release. I got my copy via NetGalley from the publisher for an honest review, and I absolutely loved it. It's an Indian-inspired fantasy about a girl named Mare. She is well off, basically. She's the illegitimate daughter of the governor of the city, and she eventually loses her right to choose who she marries after being a little rebellious in a storm, and ends up having to marry this man and go to a temple and perform rites that for her are the same as sinning, basically, is how to explain it. It's got adventure, it's got adventure, mystery, there's gods, there's mythology, it's a desert setting, which I don't read a whole lot of, and I just really enjoyed how unique and new it was. I have a full review, which I'll link down below, but basically if you are newer to the adult fantasy world, it definitely could be read by somebody that likes YA, or even if you're just new to fantasy. It's very accessible, and if you hate that insta-love trope, it's definitely not insta-love. It's a slow burn, and it's not at the forefront. The politics and the mythology are definitely more at the forefront. So I gave that one 5 stars. Totally recommend checking it out. It was great. And then next, if you watched any of my reading vlogs or Friday reads from the past few months, you'll know I've been working through the Phoenix Empress. Focus. I've been working through the Phoenix Empress by Arsenault Rivera, which is book 2 in their Bright Ascendancy series. Book 1 was The Tiger's Daughter, which I absolutely loved. So when I got the copy of the Phoenix Empress from NetGalley, once again provided via the publisher for an honest review, I was super excited and I was thinking, great, I get to continue reading this world. I hated this book. I gave it 2 stars. I think I was being generous that day. Yes, 2 stars, could not stand it. I felt like most of it was completely unnecessary. I'll link my written review below, but I feel like most of it could have been edited out and it would have been a much better book, or just edit almost all of it out and add the very small relevant portion of the book to like the beginning of the next book and it would have been just fine. But this made me hate a lot of the characters I had loved before. I was bored. It took me 3 days, I think, to read The Tiger's Daughter. It took me 2 months to read The Phoenix Empress. It just, I generally don't like the second book in series, but this was bad. This was extreme, even for me. So I'm not going to tell you don't read it. If you like The Tiger's Daughter, there's definitely some information that you'll find interesting and there's some great scenes with like the demons. But I didn't love it, and I'm actually sad that I didn't love it because I expected to, and it's just really disappointing. I might read the 3rd book. I haven't decided yet whenever it does come out. I don't think the release date has been announced yet. Yeah, there's not even a title for the 3rd book yet. They're expecting 2020, so it's almost 2019 already. Oh my goodness. But yeah, I might read it. I haven't decided yet. I was really disappointed. Okay. After, where is it? After The Phoenix Empress, I picked up The Sisters of the Winter Wood by Rena Rossner, which is a Jewish Eastern European fantasy novel that I'm not entirely sure, seems a little bit like it may have happened in like the 1930s. I was having trouble figuring out when this was supposed to be happening because it was like a village with no technology, but they were also referencing a little bit like World War II, what's it called, concentration camp type ideals and anti-Semitism, so that was brought up quite a bit actually. I gave this one 3 stars. I liked it. It wasn't what I was expecting at all. Had to do a lot more with the sexual awakening of the teenage daughters of the couple in the book, and it wasn't high fantasy. It was much more fairy tale. It had some really high points and some really low points for me, so I just kind of went in the middle, 3 stars. Overall, enjoyable read. I do recommend it. There's goblins, which I wasn't expecting, and that was a nice little surprise. Beautiful book also. Got the decal edge pages. Is it pretty without its cover? No, it's very boring without its stuff jacket. But yeah, I liked it. I think I was just expecting something different. Is maybe why I rated it a little bit lower. If I had known absolutely nothing about it, I might have given it 4 stars. Okay, after Sisters of the Winter Wood, what did I finish? I picked up Ash Princess by Laura Sebastian. This is a YA fantasy novel following Theo, the princess of a kingdom that was raided. Her mother was murdered in front of her, and now she is given the title of Ash Princess by the new king as a sort of derogatory title to keep her low and keep the rebels from being too powerful. I was expecting kind of a love triangle cheesy YA, and this actually had much more of a slower story and more politics than I was expecting. I didn't love absolutely everything about it, but it actually intrigued me more than I was expecting from the YA novel that I picked up. Overall, gave it 4 stars. I liked it. I definitely will pick up the second book. It definitely piqued my interest a little bit, and I'm curious to see how everything that happened at the end plays out in the future. Good book overall. Definitely recommend checking it out. After Ash Princess, I did something very exciting. I finally finished The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, and yes, I do have the special 10th anniversary edition. I've been reading this for a year and a half, I want to say. Year and a half, yeah, because I started with a little bitty mass market paperback, which I think is in my storage unit, and then I started reading this one, and then I ended up finishing it on audiobook. And I really loved the first half of this book. If you don't know what it's about, is it Kvothe? This guy is telling his story to a chronicler, and this is day 1. It takes 3 days to tell the story. This is day 1. Day 2 is the next book. Day 3 has not come out yet, so I'm not in any rush to finish the series because I don't want to be left hanging like everybody else. But I really loved the first half of the book, which is why I got this copy. And then for whatever reason around the 60% mark, it just slowed down and I didn't care as much. And I just wasn't as interested. I think it might also be just the really high expectations because this is a lot of people's favorite book. Everybody raves about it all the time and it's supposed to be this amazing thing. I think my expectations were a little too high, so I ended up giving it a 4-star. It's a solid fantasy read. I like it, but it's not as truly amazing as I was expecting. Next, I picked up Malice by Gwynne. This book took me about 200 pages to get into it. It is about the Banished Lands, and there's this prophecy of kind of a dark side and a light side and just the classic good versus evil, but you don't really know who's who yet. It's just the prophecy. You're following a bunch of different characters, multi-perspective on each chapter. First 200 pages, I have this issue where I say everybody's name wrong, like Nathaire is one character. Oh, we have a visitor. Hi! I am dog sitting this weekend for my parents, so we have an extra German Shepherd in the house. Say hi. Okay, sorry, dog interruption. He is going to be sleeping here. Now, if you hear panting, it's my parents' dog. I am watching him for the weekend while they are on a trip. He's an old man. He's very sweet. He would probably be in my reading vlog. Yeah, so every character I said their name wrong in my head. Like Nathaire, I called him Nathaniel. Veridus, I called Verdus. Evnus, I called Elvis. It was just a problem I had the whole time I was reading this book. I don't know what's wrong with me. That's probably why the first 200 pages, I wasn't really sure what was going on. I had a hard time following. And then there's a bunch of characters with really similar looking names on the page, and if I'd heard it, it might have been better, but around page 200, we get to the introduction of the wolf characters, dogs, Wolven, I think is what they're called. And from there on, I was hooked, and it got so much better, and this is everything I want in a high fantasy. And it was just such a satisfying read. I gave it 5 stars. I already picked up book 2. You'll see it in my haul. I just genuinely really loved this book, and it took me a long time to read because it's a chunky book, but it didn't feel like a long time because I was just having so much fun reading it. Totally recommend it. Get through the first part, and it's great. It's great. And then the final book I read in November was Vita Nostra, which is by Marina and Sergey Dyachenko. The authors are originally Ukrainian. I think it was originally published in Russian though in around 2007. I think in the blog I accidentally said 2013, but I think it's 2007. And we follow Tasha, or Alexandra as her full name. And she is on vacation with her parents, and actually it's just her mom. Her dad's not around. She's on vacation with her mom when this man starts following her around and sets all these crazy tasks. Basically it's the anti-Harry Potter. And like I said in my blog, in my original review, which I'll link down below also, this really short blurb is the best one. Amazing book, dark Harry Potter and stories with a hefty dose of metaphysics. This book is super addicting. At first you're not really sure what's going on, and then the more and more you read, you start to feel like the main character. She's obsessing over her studies, and it's really fun to fall into a book like that. And I just enjoyed this one so much. 5 stars. Totally recommend it. I know not a lot of people are reading it, but it's amazing. My Russian is not good enough to check when I was looking on Goodreads. I speak a little bit of Russian, not enough though to read large paragraphs at a time. And I think this might end up being a series. I am hoping so. I really hope, because there's more books in the Russian release. And I'm hoping that they get translated as well, because I don't want it to be over. I want more. But yeah, great book. So glad I read it. Ooh, okay, here are all the physical books I read. Oh boy, there's a lot of them. Okay, that was the 9 books I read in the month of November. Let me know if you've read any of them, if you want to read any of them. They were all fairly good, even the ones I gave low ratings to. If you're interested, give them a try. They weren't the worst things in the world I've ever read. But that being said, I hope you find a book you're interested in, and I will see you guys in my next video. Happy reading! Bye!